She stood at my gate, the morning sun glinting off her oversized sunglasses. Her grip on the clipboard was possessive, her posture radiating an authority she did not earn. She looked past me, at the mansion behind me, as if she were already its rightful owner. The house, a century-old beauty I had spent the better part of a year painstakingly restoring, gleamed in the soft light, its freshly painted trim and repaired stonework a testament to my labor. But her voice, when it came, sliced through the calm like a shard of broken glass. "You've got exactly 24 hours to pay the HOA dues," she announced, her tone flat and bureaucratic. "Or we'll have this property demolished." A short, disbelieving laugh escaped me. It had to be a prank, some bizarre, misguided joke. "You must be joking," I said, shaking my head. "This house was abandoned for decades. There's no homeowners association here." Her lips curved into that sharp, perfectly practiced smile that seemed to be the universal signature of her kind. A Karen smile, all teeth and no warmth. "There is now," she declared, waving a stack of papers she had been holding against her clipboard. "The entire neighborhood's under new management. That includes your mansion." Before I could form a retort, the crunch of tires on gravel announced another arrival. A pickup truck, white with gold lettering that read "Sheriff" on the door, pulled up, a cloud of dust rising in its wake. The man who stepped out was dressed in a uniform that was almost convincing. His boots were heavy and authoritative on the stones, and his hand rested casually, yet prominently, on his utility belt. His eyes, cold and assessing, scanned the scene before landing on me. "Sir," he began, his voice a low, firm baritone designed for compliance. "We've got a report that you're refusing to comply with HOA orders." My heart gave a single hard thud against my ribs. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was a surge of pure, unadulterated confusion. "Comply?" I repeated, the word tasting foreign. "With a woman who showed up out of nowhere claiming she owns my land?" The Karen folded her arms, her clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. "You're trespassing on HOA property, mister. We have the right to enforce compliance." The so-called sheriff gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, as if his mind had been made up long before he ever arrived. "You got proof of ownership?" he asked me, his gaze unwavering. I took a half-step back, my shoulder brushing against the cool, aged wood of the doorframe. My eyes flicked to the old brass plaque I had polished to a high shine just days ago. "Registered historical property, 1922. Proof?" I said slowly, buying time, my mind racing. "Yeah, I've got plenty. But first, tell me this. Since when does an HOA get to send law enforcement on its errands?" The Karen smirked, a tiny, triumphant flash. "Since I took over. But something was wrong. The pieces weren't fitting. The sheriff's uniform lacked specific county patches. His badge, now that I looked closer, seemed off. Too shiny, too new, the detailing slightly blurred. His vehicle, too, was wrong. It was a generic truck with a magnetic door sign, not the official marked cruiser of a county deputy. A cold certainty settled in my gut. This wasn't real law enforcement. This was theater. I decided to play my part. "All right," I said, forcing a calm I didn't entirely feel into my voice. "You want payment? Let's step inside. I'll get the paperwork." A flicker of something, alarm, hesitation, crossed the Karen's face behind her sunglasses. "No need for that," she said quickly, her voice tightening. "We'll handle this transaction outside," but I was already turning, pushing the heavy front door open and pretending not to notice how the fake sheriff followed a little too closely, his shadow falling over the threshold. Inside, the air was cool and carried the faint, clean scents of fresh paint and sawdust. And from every corner, tiny red lights blinked silently in the dimness. I hadn't just been restoring a house. I had been fortifying a fortress. Motion sensors, high-definition cameras with facial recognition, microphones that fed into a cloud-based sound recording system, every modern tool to protect this piece of history. As the door clicked shut behind me, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out to see a message from my brother. "You were right. Those HOA letters are fake. The company Neighborhood Integrity Management doesn't exist in any county records." My pulse, which had been a frantic drum, steadied into a determined rhythm. I turned and looked back at the front door, where the distorted shadows of the two intruders danced across the frosted glass panels. "All right," I whispered to the silent house, a co-conspirator in this strange drama. "Let's see how far you're willing to take this little act." That's when I saw it, a reflection in the glass of a hallway mirror. The Karen was giving a sharp, almost nervous signal to her companion. The fake sheriff's hand went to his belt, not to the handcuffs, but to a folded sheaf of papers. Yet his hand hovered for a moment too long near the empty holster on his hip. A clear, unspoken message. This wasn't about paperwork. It was about intimidation. I opened the door halfway, using my body to block the full view inside, and kept my phone in my hand, its camera angled perfectly toward them. "Recording!" The Karen's voice rose, sharp and artificially confident. "This property is officially condemned. You cannot remain here until the HOA inspection is complete." I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. "Condemned? By who? You?" She shoved the document toward me. I took it, my eyes immediately catching the bold header. "Property violation notice." But the details were all wrong. The county seal was a pixelated, blurry mess. The font was a common Times New Roman, not the official typeface used by the county clerk. And the date? The date was from 2 years ago. "Nice try," I said, my voice quiet but clear. Her face tightened, the polished mask cracking at the edges. "Are you accusing me of something?" I allowed a slight cold smile. "No, just noticing you printed your official notice from a Google image search." The fake sheriff stepped forward then, his patience evidently fraying. He snatched the paper from my hand and jabbed a thick finger toward my chest. "Enough. You either pay the dues and penalties now or we'll see you in court." "The total is $42,000. $42,000? I almost laughed again, the absurdity of it cutting through the tension. For a neighborhood that consists of 3 empty houses and a dirt road? "That's the law here," the Karen snapped, her composure slipping into outright irritation. I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. The calm I now felt was genuine. "I am the law here," she blinked, thrown off balance. "Excuse me? You should have done your homework," I said, my tone even and instructional. "Before I even started restoring this place, I had it registered under a state historical preservation trust. Any legal action, any claims, any so-called condemnations against it have to go through the State Review Board. Not a made-up HOA run out of your glove compartment." The fake sheriff's jaw tightened. He turned his head slowly toward the Karen, a flicker of confusion and anger in his cold eyes. "You said this guy was a squatter. You said he had no paperwork." Her eyes darted nervously between us. He is." "I saw him move in months ago. He's lying." I took a step closer, closing the distance between us. The camera on my phone was still rolling, capturing every twitch, every micro-expression. "I've got every document you could possibly imagine. Bill of sale, tax records, restoration permits, architectural plans, and," I paused, pointing toward the small, discreet camera mounted under the porch eave, its red light a steady, unblinking eye. "High-definition security cameras with audio. So, if you two are, as I suspect, about as real as that badge on your chest, then this entire encounter is being recorded and broadcasted to a cloud server my attorney monitors in real time." The sheriff froze. The performative authority drained from his posture, leaving behind the posture of a man caught. The Karen's expression shattered. For a single, unguarded second, pure panic flashed in her eyes before she tried to rebuild the wall of arrogance. I reached into my pocket and made a show of tapping the screen of my phone. "You've got 10 seconds to explain who you really work for," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. "Before I send this recording to the real sheriff's department." The Karen hesitated, her mouth opening and closing without sound. You're making a massive mistake." Then, from the side road, a new vehicle approached. This one was a black SUV, rolling up fast and purposefully, its windows tinted to an opaque black, its license plate frame conspicuously empty. The fake sheriff turned sharply toward it, his face paling. He muttered a single harsh word under his breath. The Karen's manufactured confidence vanished completely. We need to go," she stammered, grabbing his arm with a frantic grip. But before they could take a single step toward their truck, the SUV's door swung open. A man stepped out, and his presence was entirely different. It wasn't performed. It was earned. He was tall, with a steady, grounded gait that echoed with unassailable authority. This was the real thing. "Ma'am?" His voice was calm, deep, and cold as a winter river. "Step away from the homeowner. You're under investigation for property fraud." The Karen froze in place, her hand still clutching the fake sheriff's arm. His face went as white as the fake papers he carried. The real sheriff held up his badge, letting the morning sun catch the engraved metal. "Sheriff Dalton, County Enforcement. Mind telling me what's going on here?" The Karen found her voice first, a desperate, wheedling tone. "Officer, thank God you're here. This man," she pointed a trembling finger at me, "he broke into an abandoned property and is refusing to leave." "Stop," Dalton said, the single word cutting her off with the finality of a slamming door. "We've been tracking you for weeks. I know exactly who you are, Ms. Reynolds." Her mouth fell open. "What?" "No, I'm the HOA president." "No," Dalton corrected, pulling a thick file from under his arm. "You're the same woman who's been creating fake HOA groups to extort homeowners across 3 counties. And this gentleman here," he pointed his chin at the fake sheriff, "is your partner, not a sworn officer." The fake sheriff's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching in his cheek. "You don't have any proof," Dalton almost smirked. "Actually, I do." He turned his department-issue tablet around. On the screen was clear, time-stamped footage of the 2 of them, Karen and her partner, placing fake HOA signs on empty lots, using a stamp to create official-looking notices, and even taking pictures of themselves in uniforms that didn't belong to them. The Karen's face turned a sickly shade of pale. That's not me," she whispered, the lie so weak it barely had the strength to leave her lips. I folded my arms, content now to be a spectator. "You picked the wrong mansion, Karen." She turned her head toward me, and the panic in her eyes was now replaced by a burning, venomous hatred. "You set me up." "Set you up?" I let out a small, humorless laugh. "You walked onto my land, threatened to have my home demolished, and brought your own fake law enforcement to intimidate me. I just restored a house. You built your own case." Sheriff Dalton looked at me, a glint of respect in his eyes. "Sir, you did good calling this in. We've had dozens of complaints, but we never caught her operating in person. How'd you know she wasn't real so fast?" I shrugged. Her badge font was Comic Sans. A couple of the deputies who had emerged from the SUV chuckled. The sound harsh in the tense air, the Karen glared at me, her entire facade of arrogant authority crumbling into dust at her feet. But something about her eyes, a quick calculating flicker toward the dense tree line at the edge of my property, told me this wasn't over. She wasn't just a defeated scammer. She was a cornered animal, and she still had teeth. Dalton noticed it, too. "Don't even think about it," he warned, his hand moving to rest on his own. Very real, sidearm. But before he could finish his sentence, a second car engine roared to life from somewhere behind the mansion. The sound was sudden and violent, a guttural snarl that shattered the morning. Tires screeched, gravel peppered the side of the house like gunshot. And a second black pickup, this one older and caked in mud, sped away from a back access road I rarely used. "Vanishing into the woods," Dalton cursed, a short, sharp expletive. "Her crew is running," he signaled to his deputies, who immediately rushed back to their vehicles, radios crackling to life. I turned back to the Karen. "Crew?" I asked slowly, the word heavy with new implication. She smiled then. It was a cold, crooked, and utterly unsettling smile that didn't belong to a woman simply caught in a lie. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "You think it's just me?" she whispered, her voice low and thick with malice. "You've got no idea what you've just stepped into." And before the deputies could cuff her, she leaned forward slightly and whispered something else. The words swallowed by the sudden noise of the departing police SUV, but the chilling intent behind them sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. Dalton looked at me, his expression now deeply serious. "Get inside and lock your doors. This isn't over. Not by a long shot." I nodded, stepping back toward my porch as the sirens wailed and faded into the distance. The morning was returning to its quiet state, but the peace was now false, stained by what had just happened. As I reached for the brass doorknob, my hand hesitated. It was slightly open, a hair's breadth from being fully closed. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I was certain with every fiber of my being that I had locked it behind me when I went back inside for the paperwork. Someone else was already in my house. The moment I pushed the door open, the old floorboards of the foyer creaked under my weight, the sound like a warning sigh from the house itself. The lights in the hallway flickered once, a brief power dip, and the familiar smell of dust and paint was now tainted by something else, something metallic and alien, the scent of an intruder. I moved quietly, my senses heightened, every step measured and silent on the runner rug. Somewhere upstairs, a faint, solid thud echoed, the sound of something being moved or knocked over. I didn't have a weapon, not a real one. My eyes scanned the dim space and landed on my open toolbox left from the previous day's work. I grabbed the heaviest thing inside, a long, rusted wrench, its weight solid and comforting in my hand. I started up the staircase, avoiding the third step from the top that I knew would groan in protest. My heart was a frantic drum in my ears, but my mind was cold, clear, and focused. Whoever was inside hadn't broken in just to steal a television. They were looking for something. As I turned the corner into the long, dark hallway, I saw a shadow, a human-shaped blur, slip into the master study at the far end. It was the room where I kept the house's original blueprints, the restoration files, the deed, everything of importance. The door, which I always kept closed, was now slightly ajar, creaking open another inch as I watched. I waited, my breath held, the wrench held tight. Then I spoke, my voice steady and loud in the silent hall. "You've got 10 seconds to walk out of that room and out of my house before I make a phone call you will deeply regret." Silence. Thick, heavy, and menacing. I took a step, then another, my hand reaching for the tarnished glass doorknob. The moment my fingers brushed the cool surface, the door burst inward. A man lunged forward, his face half covered by a black ski mask that had been pulled down hastily. His eyes, wide and wild with panic, locked onto mine. He didn't speak. He just charged, trying to bull past me into the hallway. I swung the wrench not to hit him, but to block his path, the metal clanging hard against his forearm. He grunted in pain and surprise, and the impact sent a fake silver badge pinned to his chest, spinning loose. It skittered across the hardwood floor and vanished under a bookcase. Same uniform, same cheap, fraudulent badge. He tried to shove me. Again, his strength fueled by adrenaline, but I was braced for it. I caught the rough material of his jacket and yanked him off balance, pulling him into a sliver of light falling from a hallway window. "Who sent you?" I demanded, my face inches from his. He struggled for a moment, then went still, his breath coming in ragged pants. He hesitated, his eyes darting toward the window, then back to me. When he spoke, it was a ragged whisper. "Karen doesn't work alone. The houses, they're all part of it." Before I could demand what he meant, the brilliant white glare of headlights flashed through the front windows, painting the walls in sweeping arcs. The real sheriff's SUV was back, returning fast. The man in my grip renewed his struggle, a final, desperate attempt to break free. He tried to shove me toward the railing overlooking the foyer, but I held fast, and our struggle sent us stumbling toward the top of the stairs. Just as he was about to break my grip, Sheriff Dalton and 2 of his deputies stormed through the front door, their weapons drawn but held low. "Freeze! On the ground! Now!" The man froze, his shoulders slumping in defeat. The deputies rushed. The stairs, tackling him and forcing him to the floor, efficiently cuffing his hands behind his back. As they secured him, Dalton's team began a swift professional search of the house. It was one of the deputies who found it. In the basement, behind a section of new drywall I had installed just last week to patch a leak, there was a hollow sound. They carefully pried the sheetrock away to reveal not pipes or wires, but a sealed, rusted metal box, hidden by someone long before I ever arrived. Dalton brought it up to the main floor and pried the lid open with the claw of his hammer. Inside, nestled in decaying tissue paper, weren't historical artifacts. They were the tools of a massive, systematic crime. Stacks of forged property titles, blank deed forms waiting for names, fake HOA charters with official-looking seals, and hundreds of pre-printed violation notices. There were ledgers, too, listing properties, names, and extorted amounts that tallied into the millions. Dalton let out a low whistle, looking up at me with an expression of grim astonishment. "You just helped us uncover $1 million real estate fraud ring. This wasn't just a shakedown. This was their headquarters, their filing cabinet." I exhaled a breath I felt like I'd been holding for hours, finally setting the heavy wrench down on a side table with a definitive thud. The house seemed to exhale with me. "Guess this old mansion wasn't just hiding history," I said, my voice tired. "It was hiding the evidence of a crime." Karen and her crew were taken away that night in multiple squad cars. The news vans arrived as the sun was setting, their satellite dishes reaching for the sky. The mansion stood silent once more under the watchful eyes of the lingering deputies, but this time the silence felt different. It was no longer the quiet of abandonment, but the deep, proud silence of a bastion that had held its ground. The same walls that had once held the secrets of a scam now stood as stark, immutable proof of justice. A week later, I stood on the front porch once again, the restored wood smooth and solid beneath my feet. A local reporter finished her segment, smiling into the camera. "And so, the man who dedicated himself to restoring a century-old mansion," she said, her voice bright with a neat conclusion, "ended up restoring a sense of justice to the entire community." I offered a faint, weary smile in return. When the camera light blinked off, I turned to her. "I didn't do it for that," I said quietly. "I did it because no one, absolutely no one, gets to threaten a man on his own land and think there won't be consequences." She nodded, packing her equipment away. Soon, the last car pulled away, and I was alone again. I looked at the house, the evening sun casting a final, golden light that set the windows ablaze, making the fresh paint glow and the ancient stonework look warm and alive. I whispered to myself, the words carried away by the gentle breeze. They tried to destroy it, but instead this mansion destroyed them. And as the American flag I'd hung on the porch, a personal ritual when I'd finished the restoration, swayed and snapped in the evening wind, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I hadn't just rebuilt a home from wood and stone. I had rebuilt what they, in their greed and arrogance, had forgotten this land still stands for: freedom, truth, and the sacred, unassailable right to fight back.